Let's get the view now from Israel and speak to Dan Perry, who's the former chief of Associated Press in Europe, Africa and the Middle East. Dan, you are in Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for your time. What message is Prime Minister Netanyahu sending here by striking Beirut, just as an agreement between Washington and Tehran is about to be signed?
Well, it's on the edge because it could scuttle the agreement if Iran is not so desperate to have it, which logically they should be. But the message is that Israel can't tolerate the coupling of the Lebanon arena with the issues around the Persian Gulf, because from Israel's perspective, they face and have faced for a long, long time attacks by Hezbollah. And they have to be free to respond to them. And basically, it goes beyond responding to them. Israel's determined to see Hezbollah disarmed and eliminated as a military force against them. And in that, they are aligned with the government of Lebanon that wants the exact same thing. The whole world should want this same thing. So whereas the Iranians are presenting themselves as protectors and patrons of Lebanon, and maybe even being willing to sacrifice a deal that I do believe is pretty good for them, in order to secure Lebanon's safety. The reality, I think, and certainly the Israeli narrative would be that Iran is endangering Lebanon by insisting on a continuation of the presence of Hezbollah, which is the only reason why any of this is happening. Any claims that Israel has, territorial or Iranianist ambition against Lebanon, I think is largely false, with the exception of the idea that they may feel they again need a security zone to prevent border infiltrations. It all comes down to whether the world and the Arab world and the U.S. can accept Iran's insistence that Hezbollah continue to exist as a military force in Lebanon, not just a military force, but stronger than the Lebanese army.
If Washington and President Trump wants this deal so much, he could apply enough pressure on Netanyahu, can he not, for him to accept this deal?
Yeah, he could. But then again, with Trump, not everything that's said is said seriously. Not everything is consistent. Sometimes Trump has a way of willing into existence deals that don't really exist, like when he claimed Hamas agreed to disarm. So to get this deal signed, he could claim that Israel agrees to ceasefire in Lebanon, and of course it's going to fall apart the next time Hezbollah attacks Israel, which they will. And so I think a lot of this is theater. There appears to be more than daylight. There appears to be a conflict of interest between Israel and the U.S. right now, because Netanyahu realistically wants these wars to go on, and Trump is kind of desperate for an exit ramp. But then again, all things in the Middle East are temporary, and a lot of this is theater. So even when it looks like Trump and Netanyahu are at loggerheads and Trump is cursing out his erstwhile Israeli ally, in reality, it all could be just show for domestic audiences. I don't think I don't think there's any way that the United States can accept that Israel can't respond to attacks by Hezbollah, but they may pretend for a while in order to get this deal done. And by the way, if they do, that again hands the Iranians a victory, which attaches to the broader situation where, even though Iran was fairly mutilated militarily, they emerged with a strategic win, in that no longer is anyone asking not only for an end to the militias and to the missiles, but even democratic reforms. Remember that the U.S. attacked Iran to punish it for the massacres of protesters in January. Even that promise to not do that again is no longer being demanded. All this because Iran discovered the asymmetrical power of blocking the Strait of Hormuz with cheap drones and missiles that are expensive to guard against, and the U.S. blundered into the situation with no coherent plan, without its allies on side, and the result is that this regime, which I do believe is detested by the majority of the Iranian people, and its projects like Hezbollah, which is detested by most of the Lebanese people, may emerge somehow strengthened. And that is a bit of a tragedy, I think, for the Middle East as a whole.
Dan Perry, Yair Lapid, the Israeli opposition leader, has described any agreement between the U.S. and Iran as the most shocking failures of Israel's foreign policy and security policy, and said that Prime Minister Netanyahu was entirely to blame, that this was on Netanyahu's account. Clearly, there is discontent within Israel as to how this was carried out as well. Even if there is pressure, and you say, pressure from the U.S. could work and so on, can Israel go it alone without support from Washington?
Realistically, Israel can go it alone without active support, but it cannot do anything significant with active opposition. Between the two, there's a bit of a gray area where Israel might have some leeway for action the U.S. doesn't necessarily align itself with. What Lapid says has to be, on the one hand, taken for what it is, an opposition politician who faces elections in a few months and is going to blame Netanyahu. On the other hand, it is more true than the average political statements, because most of Israel sees that Netanyahu has blundered into a version of a forever war on all kinds of borders with Lebanon and Hezbollah and Iran. And the result is not the elimination of Hamas, nor Hezbollah, nor the Iranian regime. And even though Hezbollah and Hamas can be said to have been weakened ridiculously because of the Strait of Hormuz issue, Iran might actually be strengthened. And so the Israelis are not happy with this outcome at all. I myself just called it a tragedy for the entire Middle East. Of the Iranian regime, which is a criminal mafia, is strengthened. I'm just stunned that they all did this without explaining to the world that and convincing the world that some months of economic pain are going to be necessary, and without a plausible plan for avoiding a situation where Iran holds the entire planet to blackmail by blockading the Persian Gulf.
Thank you for bringing us the view there from Israel. Dan Perry in Tel Aviv.